Well, hello there, Facebook. Happy Sunday afternoon. This is TU Nap, and I have the amazingly incredible Dr. Michael Gross with me. We have a powerful message to share with you today, and our topic is the cycle of life. Am I right, Michael?
Absolutely.
I didn't look at my notes, but it's really kind of an amazing topic to discuss. And before we do that, I'd just like to thank everybody for taking your time today on Sunday. I know that Sunday is family time and it's very, very valuable time. So we like to keep this to only 30 minutes. And if you can't pop on now, then pop on during the recording. We keep that live all the time, okay? But on that note, like I said, Dr. Michael Gross has been working with me for over a year and a half, almost a year and a half, I think. And he has totally transformed my life. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful. And because he's done so much for me, I want to share his wisdom with everyone here. So, on that note, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce him. He is an author. Wait, we should back up and do this right. Dr. Michael Gross is an author, professional keynote speaker, transformational coach, and an entrepreneur. For more than 3 decades, he's been on a spiritual path as an intuitive healer, spiritual counselor, and a teacher. Through the guidance of spirit, Michael has assisted others in their personal quest for self empowerment, helping them to create the loves, the lives that they have long sought and to bring forth their intuitive abilities. Michael teaches classes in spirituality, self empowerment, Reiki, and other modalities. In concert with God, the true source, he has also achieved great success and miraculous healings. He remains humble, knowing the work he does all comes from God, the true source. He lives in Lakewood, Washington, and has just recently launched his nonprofit. My goodness, I'm having issues um, today. The nonprofit is the International Institute of Self Empowerment. And before I turn it over to Michael, here is his book, The Spiritual Primer. See? Totally changed my life. Absolutely the best read I've ever had. And I continue to read it on and on and on because there are so many golden nuggets. And sometimes as we change and grow, um, what we read 6 months ago has a different message when we read it again. So I highly encourage everybody to grab this book, and I'll make sure that it's the links and everything for Michael's contact information are in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and on that note, turn it over to Dr. Michael Gross.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for being on. I really appreciate it. I was thinking about life and having a conversation with the true source. And as I posted last night on my Facebook, that a butterfly goes through 4 stages, and it's called a metamorphosis. And of course, it goes from the egg to the larva, which is a worm, to the chrysalis stage, where it goes in a cocoon and then becomes a butterfly. And as I posted on it, I remember the true source talking to me about the cycles of life that we go through. And using that as a rough comparison, I'd like to just review about our cycles of life and things that we've gone through. So in the very beginning, of course, we're not going to say we're an egg, but truly we're a sperm that entered into the egg, and a fetus began to develop. And what happens is the first stage, of course, you go through the birth canal, and you're a child. And as you're a young little child, some of the things you remember from your past lives, but not too many, because we all reincarnate, although some have had their first incarnation. And as we go through life, I want to back up and just remind everybody, but before we incarnate, we choose our family, our friends, our relatives, our children, our bodies, even by the DNA of our parents. And even that can be an exception sometimes because, there are parents that I was talking to, some of them, they're only 5'8", 5'9", 5'10", and yet their son is 6'4", and they would say, oh, it's all the vitamins and food we give them. And maybe to some extent it is, but it's not always that way. It's what they have chosen. Or maybe there's a recessive DNA gene that someone 3 generations removed was extra tall, whatever it may have been. But in our life cycle, the first 7 years, of course, I've mentioned this before, is that we're a blank canvas. And in this blank canvas is we design our lives based on, guess what? Our family, our friends, our relatives, and also our religious leaders and perhaps teachers and whomever else is in our life. And then what begins is that we start this second life cycle, undoing a lot of our belief systems and others reinforcing them. And we have to look at something really interesting. And that is that they have a new term, it's called generational. And it's based on, from the mores and rules and regulations and belief systems based on our parents, teachers, religious people, friends, family. And they keep coming up with new concepts, new words, and they make a big deal out of it. Nothing in the universe has really, really changed. They just give a new term, they go, wow, it's wonderful, and so on and so forth. Basically, we are almost, not quite, hypnotized to believe a certain way. It's our belief system. Now we reach the age of 7, and then we realize in this phase, let's say we're out of the phase of the egg into the larva, and we're learning all about life, and we're learning about likes and dislikes. But we're greatly influenced by everyone around us. And because we're a blank canvas, we're creating our life, we have the tendency to believe that everything around us is truth. Well, I wrote to my son many years ago when he was going to college, and I said, what you believed at 7 changed at 15, which changed at 25, and so on and so forth. Now, that's not the right number of years, but our belief system changes as we get older and older and older. And understanding that whatever our truth was as a young person under the age of 7, because remember, we're all pre-programmed, begins to change for the rest of our lives. But there are some souls that hang on to that belief system. And that belief system happens to control. It controls us, stops us from growing, and creates a false belief, which we then reinforce under the words of unconditional love from our parents, or perhaps the real truth is lack of self-worth, self-love, and self-esteem. I remember one time my father spanked me. This is going to hurt me more than it hurts you. Really? You don't feel the pain. I do. But you know what? It was a great lesson. And I learned, that I shouldn't push limits. And if we look at the parents today, I'm going to ground you, go to your room with your computer, your laptop, and all the wonderful games you have. Wow, that's quite a punishment. And what we've done now, part of the life cycle of what we've learned with the younger generation, is that everybody's a victim, and being that they're not responsible for their life. Now, granted, there are exceptions to the rule. But we have to understand one thing. In our life cycle, it's about learning and growing. And it's learning what works and what isn't working for you. It's all about you and not about anybody else. And what is your belief system? First of all, our belief systems have to be very flexible. And the reason I say that is what you believe today may change tomorrow. And there's a very famous quote, and that quote is from Henry Ford: whether you think you can do a thing, whether you think you can't do a thing, you're right. Listen to the wisdom of those words. Think about how we are controlled in our life and our life cycles to believe the truth, to believe the experiences. And then you stop to think about that. Spend some time and realize it wasn't faulty thinking. It was just what you were taught, and now is not necessarily true. And I meet so many people that have suffered from lack, which is prosperity. And they remember their parents saying, money burns a hole in my pocket, or I've got extra money, my car will break down. Like, really? Well, it's true, it does happen. But think about that. Your belief system is now creating your life. Oh my goodness, I got to take responsibility. I am creating my life. And the answer is yes. Because what you think, you create. And what you create, you experience. I talk about this frequently. And I look at people and they get it. And an hour, next day, it goes in one ear and out the other. And part of your belief system Your life cycle is to experience life. Whoa, think about that. What is life? Well, it's all about what you believe it to be. And think about what you believe it to be. If you look at your life, then everything is exciting. It's a new experience. And remember, there's no such thing as failure because you learn what worked and didn't work. That's an experience, a part of your life cycle. And then somewhere around the late 40s, early 50s, I've observed that people go through a life crisis. And that life crisis has to do with family, friends, relatives. Sometimes people end up separating and going into divorce. That's part of our life cycle. Now, I'm not saying that you should go through divorce or whatever it is, but that's part of the learning experience of our life. And we have to prepare ourselves to go from, that little worm into the crystalline stage to redevelop ourselves. Means we're redeveloping our belief system and redeveloping what we truly desire in life. And part of what we do is we're always comparing ourselves to someone else. Well, Jane or John Doe has a new car. They're very successful. Look at them. Then the jealousy begins and we think we're inadequate. There goes our belief system. No, we're not inadequate. They've chosen one life path. We've chosen another life path. What's right for them is right for them. What's right for you is right for you. Now, sometimes this life path is filled with lots of joy and happiness, sometimes a lot of challenges. But whether it's joy or happiness or challenge, what it means is you're growing. And you are here to grow, to experience life. And you experience life in all ways. That which brings you joy, that which brings you tears, that which brings you happiness, that which brings you to the realization that life is nothing but an experience. And that experience, you retain that energy, knowledge of that experience in your soul. And then you birth out of your body, and then you go into your soul body, and then you start the cycle all over again. Till you finally reach a point where you don't have to do that anymore. So how many incarnations? How fast do you want to learn it? 1,000? 10? 20? It's all up to you. But in our life cycle, there is a part of us that becomes very jealous because we look around us and see only the good things in others. They're successful, they're this, they're that, and so on and so forth. And appearances are really false. I call it the mask. You put on it, I'm happy, I'm joyous, and inside you're crying, or you're angry, or you're upset. And I remember my mother, great wisdom, she said, Michael, nobody wants to hear your problems. Nobody. So if they ask you how you feel, say fantastic. That was the word she used. And there's another acronym about the story fantastic, but I'm not going to go into it. So here I am. I'm in the hospital. I've got 3 disintegrating discs. And I'm in excruciating pain. And my wife comes up to me, how do you feel? Fantastic. No, I don't. I'm in a lot of pain. But that was my immediate response. Because that's what my mother said. Nobody wants to hear your problems. And it's true. When you start spilling out your problems to someone else, they only listen to 5 or 10% of it because they don't want to hear the rest, or they're thinking of what else that makes them happy, or they're saying, and the term that I use, POM, poor old me. I don't want to hear that. It's really important for us to understand it. So the life cycles go from our youth to developing belief systems, then into our teenage and young adult years, to examining our belief system and readjusting them, to our midlife in the 45 to 55, and then we turn around, readjust them again. And then when you hit around 65, you realize, maybe all these things weren't important. And then you go back to the regrets. I should have done this, I should have done that. And if we realize that when I'm sharing with you, how about doing things that bring you joy? That's so important. The first thing most people I will talk to who are listening to me, well, I have to have a lot of money. That really gives you joy. That gives you perfect health. That gives you happiness. Oh, does that really change your life? And I will tell you that most people say yes. But the people that I work with that are super wealthy, they're so worried about their money, they can't enjoy it. And then on the other hand, sometimes their health goes downhill. And no matter what they do, when your health goes downhill, it's hard to repair it. Not that it can't be repaired, and we can heal ourselves, but for most people, they don't understand it. So understand in your life cycle, the most important thing is that your truth changes with every 5 to 10 years, sometimes a little sooner, but an average of every 5 and every 10 years, a huge change, your belief system. And that your life cycle is about gathering all this knowledge, all this understanding about what's going on in your life and what's around you. And one of the most important thing is become the observer. Observe what's going on in your life. It's like step aside and look about, why is this happening in my life? Key question, what am I to learn? That's so important. What am I to learn? Most people don't stop and ask that question. Or if they do, they're angry and they're blaming someone else. You know what? You're the one who created the experience. And the catalyst to have the experience is something that goes awry or something that brings you joy and happiness. But right now, as I talk, we're still in the pandemic. And we're still isolated to some extent. And to the extent that we're isolated, we've forgotten who we are, why we're here, and we forgot the most important thing in life is to experience life and have good conversations and friends. You cannot buy true friendship. You can buy temporary friendship, but not true friendship. You can't buy your life. You can only live your life and improve your life. And the most important way to do that is your belief system. Your belief system in your life cycle opens the door to empowering yourself. And in focusing upon our belief system, think about it. What do you really believe? I had a client one time, and she was interested in me in coaching. She said, all I want to do is make a lot of money. Teach me how to make a lot of money. Guess what? I didn't coach her. Because that's not what life is about. And because what you think you create, what you create, you experience, she's living in lack. Got a nice house and a nice car. She wasn't living in lack, but up here, in her thoughts, she was. Part of her life cycle is to realize what is really important in our life. And that's why you're here. And as you are, most of you who are on this are in the crystalline stage, about to emerge as a beautiful butterfly. It means you're about to recreate your life. Because we are all in life cycles. And the average is some people are 7 years, some people are 10 years, some are a little longer, a little shorter, but the average is either 7 or 10. And then we have little minor changes. And if you look at your life roughly, every 7 or 10 years, you made a major change in your life. Relationships, business, career, and so on and so forth. And when I was growing up, my parents said you had to go to college because you got to make something yourself. Okay. And I didn't know what to take in college. So I started taking up, being a CPA. And it was okay. Days before the computers, I wasn't totally thrilled and I dropped out. Then I found out, I got into the nursing home business. And to become an administrator, you had to have a degree, even in basket weaving, any kind of degree. And I went back and got a bachelor's and master's in human services and gerontology. Gerontology is the study of the elderly, which we would do in the nursing home business. And then I learned that. Then I went on to get a doctorate in alternative healing and minor in psych. But that was the impetus for me to do that. All that I have learned in the books is phenomenal, but all I have learned in life and working with others is even more powerful. because as the observant, I watch. And as I watch, I learn. Textbooks, they're okay. But life isn't always like a textbook, is it? And I'm reminded of a little story about our life cycles. I had a gentleman I worked with when I was in a nursing home, and he told me during the Great Depression, he's 6 or 7 years old, and he sold newspapers, and they were a penny apiece. And the cops would chase him because he was too young, and would take all his pennies and give them to his mother. And then he followed the coal truck, because those days they had coal trucks. And they had what they call hogs, which was a linen kind of basket, and they would dump it into the basket and then put it down a chute into the cellar so people could, heat their homes. And he went around following them because invariably they would drop little pieces of coal, and the person that handled the coal down the chute was too lazy to pick them up. And he would get a big bag full, and he would run home and start the furnace so they could be warm. And part of that life cycle of him realizing how valuable life was molded his life to become a very successful business entrepreneur because he valued life. But more important, he valued his family and knew what was more important. The money followed because he had fun in what he's doing. Now, there's an interesting concept in our life cycle. Having fun in what we're doing. Too many people I talk to, I hate my job, hate my job, hate my job, or the money's good, money's good, money's good, money's good. And they end up with an ulcer or high blood pressure or whatever. I love the work I do. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Yeah, it's trying. Sometimes it's frustrating, but I really love it. And anything that you do, because that's part of your life cycle that starts around the mid-50s, and really love what you do, you become very successful because you're doing it out of love. What? Not for money? Not for success? Not to be praised? Nope. You do it because you love it. Then everything follows, the prosperity, the abundance, the praise, the recognition. And I call it like going in the back door and recreating your life rather than the front door. Because you see, when you go in the back door, you have to go back to the basics. And in your life cycle, there comes a point in time where you're going to go back to the very basic in life. What brings you joy and happiness? Not prestige, not money. It's joy and happiness. So the poor old me, Pom, begins to fade away in your life. And of course, most people, part of their life cycle is FOMO. I learned that about a year ago, FOMO. And in that FOMO, you're probably what it means, afraid of missing out. Isn't that interesting? Afraid of missing out. So I've noticed people, they go to parties, they go this because they don't want to be missing out on the party and get all the recognition. They may have missed something. So here we are in that life cycle, seeking external recognition, joy, happiness, anything that makes you feel good about yourself. Guess what? That's an addiction. Because in a short period of time in your life cycle, you need more and more and more and more recognition, more praise, more this, more that. Yet in yourself, you know what is right or wrong. You know what's doing well and how you're successful. Many years ago when I was in sales, I used to say, don't tell me what I'm doing right, because I know what I'm doing right. Tell me what I'm doing wrong, because that's how I'm going to grow. And you have to have a thick skin, because if somebody tells you what you're doing wrong, right, and then your button gets pushed and you get angry, you forgot that I asked that question. And in asking that question, you are seeking excellence. You're seeking harmony and balance in your life. Now, if they tell you whatever you're doing wrong or constructive criticism, and you are angry about it, that means there's something deep within you that you know it's right, but you don't want to face the truth. And as you get into your life cycles, education, family, friends, relatives, and as you grow older and older, you realize what is important in your life 20 years ago is totally unnecessary now. And it's so important for us to realize that you've already designed your life. You designed it by your life, by your belief systems, by your thoughts, by your energy, and even by those around you. And it's so important for you to realize it because you look around you. There are people that are very successful, have beautiful homes and cars. Others are just, they have nice things, but they're not quite luxurious. And the one thing that was pointed out to me years and years ago, the difference between a Rolls Royce and a Ford is the name. Both get you to the point you want to get to. Both run on gas, or now they're hybrids or electrical. Both, need repairs. Except the Rolls Royce may cost you $10,000 or $15,000 for just a tune-up. I don't know if that's right. Versus a Ford, maybe 300 or 800 or 900. So what's the difference between the cars? Absolutely very little. Maybe the Rolls Royce is more luxurious, a little more comfortable, but everything gets you from point A to point B. The only reason you do that is you sell yourself on the idea, I have arrived. Look at me. Worship me because I am successful. Isn't that great? So what have they achieved in life? I'm going to tell you what they've achieved in life. Self-serving ego. That's what they've achieved. The word ego, edging got out. Now here's the real test. If you desire to have a fancy car, Rolls Royce, and people come to me, I said, go for it. As long as it doesn't become your identity. It doesn't become your false God. It's just an experience. And if you can turn around and take that Rolls Royce or whatever and just give it away, then you know it doesn't own you. Because that's part of your life cycle. Understanding what owns and controls you and understanding what life is real about. Because, when it's all over and done with, you just take your experience with you. I likened it to in the pyramids. The grave robbers went into the pyramids. And in the old days, the pharaohs, they would take money with them and their valuables would be buried with them in the pyramids. And they crossed the river Styx and they had a few coins so they can pay whoever was on the other side of the river Styx, the angel of death or whatever they called it, to come back again and get all your wealth. Well, guess what happened? The grave robbers got them all. That tell you something? Your life cycle is all about your legacy. Now there's an interesting word. What is your legacy? What are you going to be remembered about? What are the emotions people are going to think about you? Are they going to say you're a dirty sassafras, you were mean, you're angry, yada, yada, yada? Or were you a good person, a loving and caring person? And part of your legacy, did you teach them about self-worth, self-love, and self-esteem? Because this is what life is all about. Self-worth, self-love, and self-esteem. And those who have the many finer things in life, and I say go for it and enjoy it, as long as it doesn't own you and you can walk away from it. But I have met many people where they've lost their wealth and they wanted to end their life because they identified success with wealth. Identify success in your lifestyles, about the joy and happiness in your life and the positive influence that you've had on others and the direction of life you have experienced. You see, if you don't take time, this trite expression, stop and smell the flowers, you missed out on life. And your life cycle now begins to take a change because there reaches a point when you're in your upper 60s or 70s or even 80s and you're about to birth out. You have regrets. of things you should have done, and you denied yourself. And the most simplest things in life are the most powerful. So, what I wanted to share with you, because I see your time is up, I was just looking at the clock, is that you are unlimited. And your life cycle is all about learning everything to grow, but not owning you. Not owning your fear, your doubt, your insecurity, your self worth, self love, and self esteem. Nothing must own and control you, but always empower you. Everyone, have a great week. Thank you to you. It's been a joy. I love you all. Namaste.
Thank you, Michael. To all of you who would like to, I just want to remind you that this is an excellent book. There's so many golden nuggets in there that can help you with what Michael just shared with us about your cycle of life. And on that note, with respect to everybody's time, thank you for coming here today and joining us on this Facebook Live. And invite your friends, because Michael has so many other excellent things to share with us. And on that note, have a wonderful, joyous Sunday. And remember, all the links to reach Michael will be in the comments here below. And we will be here again next Sunday at 2 o'clock. So thank you, Michael.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great week. Tune in next week, same time, same station.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.